head what victory looks like. At what point can the Americans, Donald Trump, claim victory and leave?
Pretend? Or are you actually asking? Sure,
it's not a hard
problem.
question, Dave. That's the point I'm making. How do you do a calculus on Iran getting a nuclear weapon? That is not a
Gabe,
list
this
of
is
things.
literally this is why I didn't want to do it with Ben
can't
also,
answer
Pierce, because this is just how he debates. It's just I can't answer or you won't shut up.
I ask really
Which
obvious, tough questions.
All right, Ben, you have given a solemn pledge
Ben,
not to interrupt.
This is just so ridiculous, dude.
Let to attack mainland America by your criteria. They would have an absolute moral justification because you have a nation
I'm not
in
going to
America.
say it's a moral justification. What I'm saying is, and I'll go back to what I said earlier.
Right then. Oh, this is going to be absolutely delicious. So we've got Ben Ferguson, you know him, the conservative podcast host who thinks agreeing with Trump is a personality trait, going head-to-head with Dave Smith. And Dave Smith is a libertarian who actually holds consistent positions on war. Novel concept, apparently. This comes right after Trump's Iran address, where he's talking about short-term, intense military action, while his supporters still pretend they're the anti-war party. The cognitive dissonance it's something else. What I love about this matchup is you've got a Margar loyalist trying to defend the indefensible against someone from his own ideological neighborhood. This isn't left versus right. This is the right eating itself alive over basic consistency. I genuinely don't know how spicy this gets, but I have a feeling we're about to find out together. Subscribe if you want to watch the contradiction machine break down in real time.
Part of the problem, Dave Smith up against Ben Ferguson, co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz. Welcome to both of you. Thank you, Ben, for stepping into the breach. First of all, Dave, I mean, welcome back, obviously, but, you know, Adam was going to come on for the rematch and then has suddenly found a series of scheduling issues and conflicts, which from where I come could be probably best described as bottling it. What do you feel about
Pierce, I just want you to know I cancel things to come on your show.
Okay? And I love that about you, Ben Ferguson. And I always say to my team,
I had something today, and then you said Dave and you, and I said I'm here. I'm here for you, my friend.
You know what, Ben? You and I go back. Honestly, we go back to about 2010 doing this, and you've never bottled a debate in your life, and I love that about you. And thank you for stepping into the breach. But Dave, first of all, Adam's decision not to have the rematch. What is your view of that?
Well, I mean, I told your people when they reached out to mine to be like, hey, we want to do this. I go, I don't really think this makes sense to do this rematch. By the way, I agree with you. I love Patrick Bet David and Vinny and Tom. I got nothing but respect for those guys. I did think that was cool that they did it. Yeah. And I thought they did it in a cool way where they weren't like, Pat was bending over backward to not throw Adam under the bus, but to try to kind of give him a chance to go, hey, what'd you learn from that or whatever. And I was pretty annoyed by the fact that he just took that opportunity to take more shots at me. Look, I don't know what Adam was thinking approaching the debate that way. I don't know why he thought that would go any other way than the way it did. In his defense, I will say, pretty good tune.
Well, he's not here. I wish he was here because we could have just put it to bed. I don't think it would have gone much better for him. I think the first debate revealed that he's not that good at it, if I'm honest. Like him personally, they've always been very good to me, that team. I think if Patrick had come on, or Vinny actually, it would have been probably a better tussle. But you've got Ben Ferguson here, who you've tussled with before. Ben, welcome back, as I said. Just one rule, because there aren't like 5 people on a panel here all squabbling.
Yeah, we can have a real conversation today.
Well, that's the point. And I think the one rule I'd like to try and keep to is let's not have too much interrupting. Let's let each other speak. Let's have a proper debate about what is actually a really interesting debate, I think. And it all stemmed from something that Dave Smith on this show said about the United States being, well, let's listen to him.
The IDF is the worst terrorist organization in the region. Let's get real. The United States of America is arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world. If you want to look over the last 25 years, how many innocent civilians we've slaughtered. You're getting us into the neocon. Yeah, that's right. You're getting us into the neocon 7th war, which they've been dying for the last 25 years.
Now, as a consequence of that, all hell broke loose, obviously, online. And Ben Shapiro said about Dave, I'm sorry, but you hate the country. If you say America is the worst terrorist organization in the world, you just do. And Dave has since responded to that on this show. But Ben, let's just get you to, because Dave's already explained what he meant about this.
Yeah.
And many people agree with it, right? And, just to prep you up for this, you're about to defend the charge that America is not the world's worst terrorist organization within hours of Donald Trump posting to the world that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. But in the context of the words coming from the President of the United States, quite hard to argue that that is in itself, those words are not the words you would normally associate with the leader of a terrorist organization.
Yeah, look, I think two things about what the president said there. He's clearly talking to the leadership in Iran, and he's saying that you are going to destroy your people by not opening the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not screwing around. This goes back to FAFO. The president of the United States of America is using the same foreign policy that Hillary Clinton used, that Bill Clinton used, that Jimmy Carter used, and that Barack Obama used.
When did any of them threaten, Ben? When did any of them threaten?
Wait.
Oh, I love this already. Ben Ferguson stepping in because Adam suddenly found scheduling conflicts. Mate, that's just running away with extra steps. And Dave's right there calling it what it is without even being mean about it. But here's what gets me. Ben Ferguson is co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz. That's his world. That's his ideological home base. He's not some random conservative pundit. He's literally in Ted Cruz's orbit. The same Ted Cruz who spent years talking about constitutional restraint and limited government before becoming whatever he is now. And then Dave drops the actual substance. The United States being arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world over the last 25 years based on civilian casualties. Now hold on. I need to sit with this because here's what the clip doesn't tell you. Dave Smith has been making this exact argument for years on his podcast, Part of the Problem. This isn't some hot take he came up with to be edgy. This is consistent, non-interventionist philosophy rooted in looking at actual body counts from Iraq, from Libya, from Syria, from Afghanistan. What did we get from those interventions? What did the Iraqi people get? What did Libyan citizens get when we helped turn their country into an open-air slave market? These aren't rhetorical questions. And then, Piers brings up Trump's post about a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. And Ben's response is what? He's clearly talking to leadership in Iran. Oh, is he? Is threatening civilizational extinction just normal diplomatic language now? The audacity of comparing Trump's rhetoric to Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, the man who literally brokered peace at Camp David. The mental gymnastics required to draw that line should qualify for Olympic consideration. Ben's already in defense mode, and they've barely started. He's doing that thing where you answer a different question than the one being asked. Dave asked when any previous president threatened what Trump threatened, and Ben just pivots. Classic.
Boy who cried wolf. It's like there's a danger in that as well. In the president of the world's greatest military not doing what he says he would do if X, Y, Z doesn't happen.
Well, okay, so let me say, first of all, there's just this obvious contradiction in what Ben just said there, which is that on one hand, he's saying the president doesn't bluff. He draws a red line and he sticks to it. And then on the other hand, saying, that's just Donald Trump. He talks crazy like this. And you're just trying to win a cheap political argument if you look at what he's literally saying. It can't be both of those things now, can it? If he doesn't bluff, then Donald Trump has promised to send them back to the Stone Age, that it will be the end of the civilization, never to be recovered, and that presumably starting tonight is bridge and power plant days. Okay, yes. So if he doesn't, right. So remember the non-interrupting rule. So if he's either bluffing or he's not bluffing here. Now, obviously, it does bode well for this particular political argument that sparked off on your show a few weeks ago, that now Donald Trump is making these threats. But the position Ben's in here, it's almost like being the White House press secretary. If we were talking last week and I had said, Donald Trump's going to say this, you would have been like, no, he's not. No one's saying that. This is ridiculous. But now he's said it. So now you have to defend how he doesn't bluff, but also he doesn't really mean what he said. Look, Pierce, I don't know. I hope you're right. But all the indications here are that tonight's 8 p.m. deadline is going to come and go without the Iranians capitulating. And so Donald Trump has really put all his chips in on the center of the table here. So to the dynamic you just laid out, he's now painted himself into this corner for absolutely no reason, He's painted himself into this corner where he's either got to do something huge or, as you said, be exposed as just being a complete bluffer,
My
not
guess
having
is,
a real
my
red
guess,
line.
Dave,
Here's the difference, though.
hang on, Ben. But my guess is he'll say, you know what, we're getting somewhere with the Iranians. The new leaders want to do a deal, so we're going to give them a bit more time, which is what he'd been doing throughout this war. And Ben, the trouble with doing that is if you keep doing that, but the Iranians keep saying, no, we're not talking to you. What are you talking about? And they keep the Straits of Hormuz shut, and they carry on firing weapons at their Gulf neighbors, and they carry on exactly what they're doing. And then you have Pete Hegseth saying, we've got total air dominance, and right until one of our fighter planes gets shot down, and we have to send in $300 million worth of rescue mission to get the pilots out. That doesn't say to me that all these defenses have been destroyed, does it?
Piers, we have total air dominance over the country, and hitting one of our planes. Yeah, when you're throwing a lot of stuff up in the air, going after airplanes, there is a very good chance you'll be able to get one. That's why it's called war. No one said that they would never touch one of our airplanes. Go find that quote. It doesn't exist. But the fact that we have total dominance over the airspace is proof. The fact that we were able to go in there with helicopters and do real search and rescue missions and bring them home. By the way, some of those helicopters also got shot at from the ground, some of them with AK-47s from the ground. That doesn't mean that it's totally perfect. In Venezuela, we had total air superiority there. We also had one of the guys that was flying one of the helicopters get shot from the ground. It's called war. The idea that like people aren't going to get hit or things aren't going to get hit or equipment aren't going to get hit, that's a video game. That's absurd. That is not what the president's saying. That's not what the Pentagon is saying. When you have total air dominance, it means you can do and hit what you want to 99.9% of the time, and they're not coming back after you. They don't have radar systems. We've taken them out. We're able to pretty much fly freely over that country and hit targets that we want to hit. And so I think what you're saying is basically you're trying to make it a lot worse than it is. Dave said on the last show, and I was watching it earlier as I was prepping for this, that this is a quagmire. If you go, and this is the part where I say it's like rooting against America. The definition of a quagmire, if you ask social media, is a little different than if you actually look up the definition or you ask AI. A quagmire is years. A quagmire is 2+ years if you look at how they teach it in military schools. This isn't coming from me. This is if you go to West Point, they say if you are bogged down in a war and you are losing or stagnant, they use Vietnam as an example of that. They use the never-ending war in Afghanistan as another example. The word quagmire starts being used after years. We're talking weeks into this thing, like 2 months in. We're talking about the fact that we've taken out, and you say, well, the president's got a problem here, and they don't believe him.
See, this is the part where it all falls apart. And I mean, structurally falls apart. Dave just laid out the cleanest logical trap I've seen in political discourse, and Ben walked straight into it with both feet. Bluff or no bluff. That's it. That's the entire question. You cannot simultaneously argue that Trump doesn't bluff and that Trump's words shouldn't be taken literally. Those two positions are mutually exclusive. Basic logic, primary school stuff. And what does Ben do? He tries to hold both positions at the same time, like some kind of ideological contortionist. The president doesn't bluff, he draws red lines and sticks to them. But also, that's just Donald Trump talking crazy, don't take it seriously. Pick one. You have to pick one. Here's what the clip doesn't show you about Ben Ferguson's track record. This man has been doing this exact routine for years. On his podcast, on Cruz's show, across conservative media. The pattern is always the same. Defend the action when it looks strong. Minimize the words when they become indefensible. It's not analysis. It's reputation management dressed up as commentary. And then Piers of all people, is the one pointing out the obvious corner Trump's painted himself into. When Piers Morgan is making the sensible observation about your foreign policy, something has gone catastrophically wrong with your position. The 8 p.m. deadline came and went. We all know how that played out. Trump's April 3rd address tried to reframe the whole thing as strategic patience, but, mate, you threatened civilizational extinction. You don't get to walk that back with, we're giving them more time. And Ben's pivot to quagmire definitions? Textbook deflection. Dave calls it a quagmire. And suddenly we need dictionary arbitration? We need West Point syllabi? The Pentagon's own assessments have acknowledged this operation has extended well beyond initial projections. Ferguson's entire defense collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. He's not defending a coherent foreign policy, he's defending a personality. And that's the fundamental problem.
You've taken out their top leader, then their replacement, then their replacement, then their replacement. You've taken out their air superiority. You've taken out their Navy. Like, you guys, I'm sorry, like the idea that this is a quagmire or is not successful and, well, they won't believe the president if he bluffs on this one. Call the last 4 dead guys that were the leader of Iran and tell me they don't believe President Trump.
Why, if the United States has such incredible, overwhelming military success in this war so far, why are the Straits of Hormuz still shut?
Because I think if you look at the issue there, number one, you're dealing with international issues there. And number two, you're also dealing with the fact that it is a waterway. And if you can't just like go in there and bomb the hell out of it and then expect the ships to come through. It has to be orderly. 3, if you talk to maritime individuals, specifically those that deal with insurance, I did about an hour-and-a-half phone call saying, teach me everything. It has to be a safe place or you cannot get the insurance. The last thing you do is go in there militarily because then nobody will insure any of these boats at all. So therefore, they will not come through the Strait of Hormuz because they can't get the insurance policy they need for the maritime movement of those boats. Some of this is not that complicated. You just need to ask questions.
Okay, before I go to Dave, just be very clear with me in your head what victory looks like. At what point can the Americans, Donald Trump, claim victory and leave?
To me or Dave?
To you, before I go to Dave.
Oh, to me.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 different definitions here of victory. I think there's the clear victory, which Trump talked about from the very beginning, and all past Democratic presidents since 1979. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That is my first definition of victory. If we have Iran that has been pushed back to the Stone Ages and they're nowhere close to enriching their uranium at 60+%, and that we know that we are safe from a nuclear Iran and a dirty bomb, they've clearly said it over and over again, death to America. We know that's their intent. They've been saying it for 40+ years. That is my definition of victory. A bonus on top of that, a tier 2 victory, which I think the media has already made this the new standard, which I disagree with fundamentally, is that there is regime change. The president's made it clear he would love for there to be regime change. And by the way, there has been. We've killed their top 4 guys. So that's 4x regime change, in my opinion. If 4 people that were in charge are no longer in charge, that's pretty good. Would I love for the people in Iran to be able to take over and have genuine freedom? Yes. Is that what I consider a victory? No. That is a bonus.
Air dominance. Air dominance. He's genuinely sitting there talking about air dominance like that's the metric we should be celebrating right now. I need everyone to really sit with what just happened in that clip. Ben Ferguson listed off a body count of Iranian leaders like he's reading a restaurant receipt. We killed this guy, then his replacement, then his replacement. Mate, that's not a victory lap. That's an admission that you're playing whack-a-mole with an entire government structure and calling it strategy. And here's what Ben conveniently skips past: the Strait of Hormuz. Dave asks the simplest possible question. If American military dominance is so overwhelming and so complete, why is one of the most critical shipping lanes on the planet still closed? That's not a gotcha. That's a genuine policy question. And Ben's answer? Insurance companies. Maritime logistics. You can't just bomb it and expect ships to come through. I'm sorry, but isn't that the point? Isn't that exactly the point? You've spent weeks telling us about overwhelming force and decisive action and regime change times 4, but you can't secure a waterway because of insurance premiums. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of global oil traffic. 20%. When that's closed, the entire world economy feels it. Gas prices, shipping costs, supply chains, real people paying real money because of real consequences. But sure, let's talk about air superiority. And then Ben defines victory. 2 tiers apparently. Tier 1, no nuclear Iran. Tier 2, regime change, but actually we've already had regime change 4 times because we killed 4 leaders. That's his definition. That's what he's going with. By that logic, every assassination is a successful regime change. Every drone strike that hits a general is mission accomplished. You haven't changed the regime, Ben. You've created job openings. The ideology, the infrastructure, the actual power structures, all of that remains completely intact. This is the fundamental disconnect between military dominance on paper and strategic success in reality. You can control the skies and still lose the ground. You can sink navies and still watch shipping lanes close. You can eliminate leadership and watch new leaders emerge within days. Ferguson's framework only works if you never ask what victory actually looks like beyond the explosions.
asked you one question about a
Well, I
nuclear
was
weapon. It's
about
not a
to-
ridiculous list.
Yes, it is. Do I get a chance to talk now, or do you just want to ask questions to yourself? Is this just pretend, or are
explain.
you actually asking? Sure,
It's not
no
a hard
problem.
question, Dave. That's the point I'm making. How do you do a calculus on Iran getting a nuclear weapon? That is not a
Gabe,
list
this
of
is
things.
literally this is why I didn't want to do it with Ben
can't
also,
answer
Pierce,
it.
because this is just how he debates. It's just I can't answer, or you won't
I
shut
asked
up.
really
Which one
obvious,
is it?
tough questions.
All
I
right, Ben, you have given a solemn pledge
Ben,
not to interrupt.
This is just so ridiculous,
let
dude.
Dave respond.
Okay, go ahead.
Just for the record, Ben, everyone can see through this tactic. Everyone can see through it. First of all, the
Not smart
intelligence
people.
going. There you go. Yeah. Every one of them can see through this bullshit. Okay, so the intelligence that we had leading into the 12-day war, which was right there in the annual threat assessment, which Tulsi Gabbard testified under oath in Congress, was that Iran had not made the political decision to start developing nuclear weapons yet. And so now you've got it as if we do nothing, not only do they have deliverable nuclear weapons, but they've used them offensively, which no country... Yes, you did. Which no country in the history of the world,
I said they had it
except the United
60%. 60% is not a nuclear weapon, Dave. Go back and listen to what I
everyone
said.
can go back to-
60%
yes,
is
everyone
not
can go back-
a nuclear weapon. That is
I'm not
what I
saying
said.
60%
This is why I
is a nu-
interrupt you, because you make up shit that I never said. I never said
Pierce.
they had a nuclear weapon. I used the word
Pierce.
if and close.
Okay. Honestly, I'll just, if you want to let me speak, I will. Anyone can go back and listen to what you just said. I'm not claiming you said 60%
Yes,
was
please
uranium.
rewind it on YouTube.
Pierce, do you remember the part where he said, and then they detonate a nuclear bomb over a city?
What?
Do you remember
Ben
that?
just said, Dave, everyone can rewind it on YouTube.
This is just so stupid, dude.
That
It's a bit like when
Switzerland right
Marco
there, my
Rubio
friend.
said
That was
what he
Switzerland.
said.
Well
It's a bit
done,
like
Switzerland.
when Marco Rubio said, actually, the reason we preemptively attacked was because we'd heard the Israelis were going to go in, so we thought we'd better get in before the retaliation came. And the next day we were told that he hadn't said what we'd heard with his own mouth.
There you go, Ben. You just did it again. So anyway, the point is that, look, and as I've made this point before on your show here, Pierce, I mean, this is just like, even the argument here. Look, we sat by the United States of America while Joseph Stalin developed nuclear weapons, and we knew he was doing it. While Mao Zedong developed nuclear weapons, and we knew that he was doing it. These are the most evil people who have ever lived. We didn't launch a war of aggression to stop them. Now, that doesn't mean you don't pursue diplomatic goals here, but to say Obama, and listen, Obama and Joe Biden had horrible foreign policies in a million different ways, but it's not true that appeasement didn't work. They had a deal. If 60% enriched uranium was the big concern, well, Iran was down to like 3% enriched uranium until Donald Trump tore it up. Now, there were sunset provisions in the JCPOA, and perhaps it would have been better to try to strengthen them, to try to come up with a better deal here. But instead, at the behest of the Israelis, Donald Trump insisted on these ridiculous negotiating strategies. This no enriched uranium at all, no civilian nuclear program, no intercontinental ballistic missiles, no supporting Hezbollah or Hamas or any of this. And this was never going to lead to a deal.
Support a terrorist organization.
Well, it's not.
You think that,
well,
you think we should allow that?
Great thing. It's not such a great thing when it leads to this.
And
now,
Ben,
is it?
and Ben, the
It's
point I
leading
would
to
make,
death
Ben,
and destruction.
Ben, the
Wait,
question
hold
I
on,
have for
hold
you
on,
is,
wait,
Ben,
Oh,
if
that's
he
what you
just
got.
said
Hang on,
that we
hang on,
should
hang
allow
on,
Iran to
hang on,
sponsor
Ben.
terrorist organizations.
Ben, if
he
you're
just said we should allow them in the deal to like sponsor Hamas and Hezbollah.
Ben.
Like, what the hell world are we living
Ben,
in?
let me ask you a question. Ben, if your
You're the
position,
terrorist, Ben.
Ben,
policy.
You're the terrorist.
Ben, if your position,
I'm the terrorist,
Hang
okay.
on, Ben. If your position is that if a nation espouses a desire to wipe out another country, then the country on the receiving end has an absolute right to not just defend itself, but attack the country threatening them. Right? That's the defense for right.
I think it also has to be based on, do they have the ability to do this?
So
right?
assuming ability.
So
Right,
so
okay, so here's my
are they
question.
trying to
So
get
here's
the
my
ability
question.
to
so
do it?
when the president of a country says publicly that he is going to, well, I'll read it again. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want it to happen, but it probably will. When a president of a country says that, presumably by your definition, Iran would now be perfectly entitled to attack the United States.
I think Iran's already been attacking the United States of America.
No, I
That's
mean,
why we're in this
mainland-
conversation
if they
right
wanted to
now.
attack
And there it is. That's the whole thing right there, laid bare for everyone to see. Dave Smith just walked Ben Ferguson through the most basic logical exercise imaginable, and Ben couldn't do it. He couldn't answer. The question was simple, If a nation threatening to destroy another country justifies preemptive attack, then by that exact same logic, Iran would be justified in attacking the United States after Trump said a whole civilization will die tonight. That's not a trap. That's just consistency. And what does Ben do? He pivots immediately to Iran's already been attacking us, which isn't an answer. It's an escape hatch. Because the moment you apply the same standard to American rhetoric that you apply to Iranian rhetoric, the entire framework collapses. This is what I need everyone to understand about this debate, and frankly, about the broader state of conservative foreign policy right now. There is no coherent principle here. There's just tribalism dressed up in military jargon. Dave Smith, and I want to be clear here, because this matters. Dave Smith is a libertarian. He's not on my team politically in 100 different ways. But what he demonstrated in this debate is something that used to be foundational to conservative thought. Restraint. Skepticism of military intervention. Questioning whether endless wars actually serve American interests. That used to be the conservative position. Before Trump. Before the complete ideological capture of the party by whatever Trump says on any given Tuesday. And Ben Ferguson represents what's replaced it. Defend the leader. Justify the contradictions. Change the subject when the logic falls apart. When Dave pointed out that the JCPOA had Iran down to 3% enriched uranium before Trump tore it up, Ben had nothing. Because there's nothing to say. The deal was working by the metrics they themselves claim to care about. What this debate reveals is the fracture at the heart of the modern conservative movement. You've got people like Dave Smith holding on to actual principles about non-intervention and limited government. And you've got people like Ben Ferguson who've abandoned principle entirely in favor of personality. The principle is whatever Trump does is correct. That's it. That's the whole ideology now. And the uncomfortable truth? Dave Smith's position on restraint is closer to traditional conservatism than anything Ben Ferguson argued for tonight. The party hasn't just shifted, it's completely inverted. So where does that leave us? It leaves us watching supposedly serious commentators tie themselves in knots defending threats of civilizational extinction while simultaneously claiming those threats shouldn't be taken seriously. It leaves us watching people celebrate body counts while ignoring strategic failures. It leaves us watching the complete collapse of intellectual consistency in real time. If this debate showed you anything, it should be this. The people defending Trump's foreign policy can't actually defend it. They can deflect. They can interrupt. They can change definitions mid-sentence, but they cannot construct a coherent argument that survives 5 minutes of genuine scrutiny. And that matters. That matters because these aren't just cable news debates. These are the ideas shaping actual policy, actual bombs, actual lives. Right. If you made it this far, you're clearly as invested in watching this unfold as I am. Make sure you're subscribed because we're not done with this story. Not even close. Actually, speaking of which, there's another clip making the rounds right now of a journalist absolutely putting one of these administration defenders on the spot about Iran. Live television. Visible panic. It's worth your time. I'll leave the link. Go watch that next. And drop a comment below. Tell me, after watching this whole thing, do you think Ben Ferguson actually believes what he's saying? Or is this just the performance required to stay in the Trump ecosystem? Because honestly, I'm not sure anymore. Talk to me.